Good morning. Well, I say that. I don't know what time of day you're watching this video, but for me, it is 8:18 in the morning. So, good morning. Um, the last time I told you we were talking about the War of 1812, and I told you that the Americans just really won some very major naval victories on the water. But today we're going to talk about some land battles. And quite frankly, America didn't do so good on the land part in the War of 1812. Now, when the war began, a lot of the battles were taking place up around the border of Canada. We're still in the United States, but up around the Canadian border. But pretty soon it moved to the Chesapeake Bay area. And there was this British admiral, and he really set his sights on, y'all probably hear my little dog yapping in there. He really set his sights on the American capital, on Washington, D.C. And so he made his way to the capital, and he really did a lot of damage. He burned down the White House, he burned down the Capitol building, he burned down the Treasury building, and pretty soon Washington, D.C. fell. So if you're America and you lose your capital city, Washington, D.C., then that's a bad thing. And so we lost a major battle right there. Pretty soon, in 1814, now you got to understand, I told you before that Napoleon and France was attacking Europe, and part of that included Great Britain, okay? Well, in 1814, their fighting stopped. Napoleon, he quit. And so now Great Britain can focus all of their military efforts on America. So they send a lot more troops, they send a lot more Navy ships, and they're really focused on America now because the fighting in Europe stopped, but they still got this war going on. And so what they decided to do is they were going to take Baltimore. And they were going to take Baltimore by taking a fort there called Fort McHenry. And this is a very significant thing because they had come out with these rockets. Now, I know in 1814 you're thinking they had rockets. They were nothing like the rockets that we have now. They were pretty much great big fireworks on with an iron head on the top of it. They didn't fly very far. They weren't really very effective, but they were terrifying to people that had never seen them before. Now, rockets, the British didn't invent rockets, okay? The Chinese had used them a couple hundred years before that. Then in the 1700s, Great Britain was fighting against India. And India had used the rockets against Great Britain. But Great Britain won, and so they confiscated, they took some of India's rockets and they started trying to make their own. And they wanted to improve on them and make them a little better, and they did, but they still weren't all that effective. But anyway, they started using these rockets and shooting cannonballs at Fort McHenry. Now, Fort McHenry had this humongous American flag that hung over it. This thing was huge. It was just ridiculous, okay? And there was a guy there by the name of Francis Scott Key. And Francis Scott Key was watching as this battle took place. And he was inspired because at the end of it, after the battle was over with, that American flag was still standing. And so he wrote a poem, and I've given you the poem in the PDF file that you've got. But it says, "Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight." Now, perilous means dangerous, okay? So through this perilous fight, can you see the stars and the stripes? "Or the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bomb bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?" Now, later this is put to music, and we sing it now and know it as the Star-Spangled Banner. It became our national anthem, okay? But when he talks about the rocket's red glare, that's what he's talking about, is these rockets that Great Britain is shooting at Fort McHenry. And when they shot, they gave this red glare, a red light that you could see. And so that is how we got our national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner, all came from this battle at Fort McHenry. So, like I say, most of the battles against Great Britain took place up north. Down the south, we were fighting too, but remember, Great Britain had teamed up with the Native Americans, the American Indians. And so most of the fighting in the south was against the Native Americans. And we had a guy by the name of General Andrew Jackson. Now, General Andrew Jackson was absolutely tough as nails. He had fought in the Revolutionary War. Now he's fighting again in the War of 1812. Later on, he's going to become our another one of our presidents. But he was really, really tough. He was so tough that he got a nickname. They called him Old Hickory. Now, hickory is, if you don't know, is a very, very strong wood. They use it to make axe handles and different things. And because he was so tough, like Old Hickory Stick, that's what they called him, was Old Hickory. And Old Hickory, General Andrew Jackson, fought against the Creek Indians in a battle called Horseshoe Bend, and he won. So, with all this going on, I was asked earlier if America hadn't won the War of 1812, what would have happened? Well, I can't say America won. We didn't really lose either. It kind of came to a tie, okay? And they agreed to stop fighting. And when two countries agree to stop fighting like that, it's called a treaty. And so some people that represented America went to a place called Ghent, Belgium, okay? And some people that represented Great Britain went to Ghent, Belgium. And in Ghent, Belgium, they signed a treaty called the Treaty of Ghent because they were in Ghent, Belgium. And at the Treaty of Ghent, that's where the War of 1812 officially came to a stop. Now, the problem with that was that they couldn't exactly pick up the phone and call anybody and say, hey, okay, we just signed the treaty. It wasn't on the news because it wasn't in TV. They couldn't send a text message or put it on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or nothing else. So, even though the war officially stopped, everybody didn't know it stopped. And so there was a British naval group that was going to attack New Orleans. But there was a French pirate by the name of Jean Lafitte. Yeah, you can have fun saying that if you want to. Jean Lafitte. And Jean Lafitte had warned the Americans and General Jackson that the British were going to attack New Orleans. So when they got there, the Americans were already waiting for them. Now, the Americans were way outnumbered. We had about 4,500 troops. The British had about 7,500 troops. So they had about 3,000 more people than we did. But we were waiting on them. And remember when we talked about the Revolutionary War, how the British fought? They kind of dumb. They had these great bright red coats on. They all lined up in a line. And these Americans didn't. They'd hide behind anything they could get behind. They might hide behind some bushes or trees or hay bales or whatever they could get behind and hide and wait on them. So General Jackson is famous for giving the order. He said, don't fire till you can see the whites of their eyes. Now, I'm on a video and you're probably looking at me pretty close. It'd be hard to see the white of my eye right now. If you can see the white of somebody's eyes, they're real close to you. And that's really what he was saying. He said, wait until they get right up on us. And what they were going to do is jump out and kind of sneak attack them, in other words. They're going to let them walk right up to us, and then we're going to jump out and start shooting at them. And that's what they did. And now, again, America had not done so well on land in the war. So remember last time I told you about nationalism. Nationalism is taking a pride in your country. Well, a lot of Americans weren't so proud. Nationalism wasn't so hot at the moment because we hadn't been doing that great. So even though the war was actually technically and officially over, this Battle of New Orleans, which we won, by the way, decisively, we ended up killing about they only fought for about 30 minutes. In 30 minutes, we killed about 2,000 British soldiers. About 70 Americans that got killed. Okay, so we just whooped the dog out of them. And because we whooped them so bad, then people were really, really proud of America again. And we had a strong sense of nationalism, a strong sense of pride in our country because the Battle of New Orleans had been such a huge and decisive victory. Matter of fact, and I'm going to post a video of it, there was a song written about it later on by a guy. He just kind of wrote a lot of songs about American history and folk tales and that kind of thing. And one of them he wrote about was it's called the Battle of New Orleans, and I'll post a video for you to watch. Now, so the War of 1812 is now officially over. Okay, it's over with. All the battles have been fought. What happened? What effect did it have on our country? Well, America had already showed that it was strong and kind of stubborn and hard-headed and willing to fight for our independence when we fought in the Revolutionary War. Well, now not only have we showed the world that we are willing to earn our independence, but we're willing to fight to keep it. We're not going to let anybody just come in and run all over us. Like I said, we did really good on the water, not so good on land, but we're willing to fight. We held our own against one of the most powerful militaries in the world, and so we're willing to fight and keep our liberty. Again, even though the Battle of New Orleans, it didn't affect the outcome of the War of 1812 because the treaty had already been signed about 2 weeks before it was fought. But by the way, the treaty of Ghent was signed on December 24th. Okay, it was signed on Christmas Eve. Just a little side note. I thought that was interesting. It did create a very strong sense of nationalism again. It made people proud of our country because it was such an incredible win. We got the national anthem out of it, the Star Spangled Banner. And also the Battle of New Orleans was the last time that America and Great Britain would fight each other. That was the last time. It has not happened again since then. And so that's kind of a big deal. Now, the Treaty of Ghent didn't address two of the major reasons that we went to war to start with, okay, which was impressment. Remember, impressment was when the British were stealing American ships and sailors and putting them on their boat and forcing them to work on their boat. So it didn't address impressment. And it did not address the fact that America could decide if they wanted to be neutral or not when other countries were in a conflict, because that's what it was all about. Part of it was all about to start with was Great Britain did not want us to be neutral against Napoleon and France's war in Europe. They wanted us to take their side. But what it did do was it guaranteed peace, okay, because the War of 1812 is over with now, so it gave us peace. And it said that all territory conquered during the war, so any land that Great Britain took from America had to be returned and given back to us, all right? It also allowed the United States to expand in the Great Lakes area. And it was a big diplomatic victory because, remember we talked about diplomatic before school let out, where you got people that are able to talk through things and discuss things instead of fighting it out. So even though we were in the middle of the war, the treaty was where we came together, we talked about things, and we signed the treaty, and that was the end of it. Now, one of the bad things that it did was it really kind of put a strain on the Americans' relationship with the Native Americans. The American Indians now are going to be really, really ticked off at the Americans, okay? They're not going to like us at all. Remember, I told you when we talked about political parties, one of the political parties was called the Federalist Party. Well, after the War of 1812, the Federalist Party pretty much went away. They had been against getting involved in the war, and some of them had even talked about seceding. Now, when you talk about states seceding, and y'all talk about this again in Coach McKnight's class in 8th grade, because that's when you'll talk about the Civil War. When a state secedes, and that's S-E-C-E-D-E, secede, what they do is they break away from the rest of the country. So when Mississippi seceded, we said, okay, we're no longer going to be part of the United States. We're still Mississippi. We're still here, but we're not going to be part of the United States anymore. And Mississippi seceded again and a lot of other states did too during the Civil War. But that position at this time was considered to be completely unpatriotic. And because it was unpatriotic, people didn't like it, then pretty soon the Federalist Party just sort of went away. All right, that's going to be the War of 1812. Again, watch this video, read the PDF if you haven't already. Again, I'm going to post another video about, it's a little song written about the Battle of New Orleans, so maybe it'll kind of help you remember some of it. But listen, guys, I miss y'all very much. I hope you're doing well, and I can't wait to see you again. Take care, okay? Bye-bye.